vision drives strategy, which drives execution. And here's another thing that's really cool in observing entrepreneurs and management teams, especially the CEOs and founders. They have to evolve as people. I mean, just like you're going through major transformations, being students or whatever stage of life you're in terms of professional development, they have to as well. And it's really interesting to watch and track that. I get to teach, I'm a lucky person, I get to teach a class, the one I'm teaching right now, with a fellow named Randy Komisar, who's been in this seminar series many, many times over the years, thank goodness. And Randy's a venture capitalist now. He's done many, many things over his life as well. But he wrote this book called Monk and a Riddle. I highly recommend it. It's a lot more fun to read than this red book that I wrote. I got a laugh there. Randy has this wonderful metaphor. How many of you own pets? Had a pet, or you have just in love with a pet? Good, thank you, because I do too. And I love my cat. And Randy loves his dogs. And so he has this way of talking about CEOs as dogs. I know that sounds funny, but lovingly as dogs. And he says there's three kinds of CEOs. He says like three kinds of dogs: retriever, bloodhound, and husky. And they have to evolve. In other words, the retriever has to evolve to be a bloodhound, which has to evolve to be a husky, if they're going to continue to be CEO. So let's talk about that in a minute. So a retriever is like the initial founder of the company, the initial CEO. They have to go out and, trade stock, which is all they got, equity, for ideas, for a little bit of money, a little bit of talent to get the thing going. And then, and craft a vision, like we talked about. Then the bloodhound has to, is the next kind of CEO a company needs to go sniff out a trail. And that's sort of like setting a strategy. And then lastly, as a company grows, the husky needs to take over. And so what you're going to see in here, because you're just going to get people at a point in time, and what we've seen in here for the last 8 years that we've been doing this and storing them up on the website and chopping them up in these video clips, is people who were really good at being a bloodhound, like a retriever or bloodhound, but maybe not so good at being a husky. Or they realized that and they turned it over. So let's talk about Larry Page, for example. What was he? Well, he was a retriever to begin with, as he and Sergey got Google started down on University Avenue. Pretty good bloodhound in setting out the strategy determined about the whole notion of AdWords and so forth. But when the company became 200 people, was about 5 years ago, he turned it over to Eric Schmidt, a very compatible CEO who was the husky, who's brought that company along to where it is today, and it's it's all its glory. And I could go in that example after example of some people who can make that full transition. I mean, Bill Gates, you could argue, is sort of the previous generations of Google, sort of made that transition all through the 80s and 90s. So it's fascinating.